Heartwarming twist, single dad discovers his babysitter for twin daughters is the CEO's daughter. Jake sat on the worn-out couch, the morning sun flooding the small living room of their Chicago apartment. Mia and Lily, his spirited twin daughters, were already bouncing around, throwing pillows and giggling like they owned the world. The sound brought him to life, a reminder of why he worked so hard. But today was different. Today, they would meet Emma, the new babysitter. He couldn't ignore the tightness in his chest as he turned the pizza-stained calendar page. He had no idea what changes she would bring, or how this would shift their little universe. When Emma arrived, her bright smile lit up the room. "Hi, girls," she chirped. They shrieked in delight, instantly captivated by her vibrant energy. Jake watched as she spun a delightful story about a dragon and a brave knight. It was like watching magic unfold. He barely recognized his daughters as their eyes sparkled with wonder. Every laugh released a flicker of hope within him, a feeling he hadn't realized he craved. Could she be the answer to the heaviness weighing on their home? But then he learned the truth. As they cleaned up after a particularly chaotic day, Emma casually mentioned her father, a wealthy CEO. The name hit Jake like a punch to the gut. The town's most notorious figure, someone who seemed entirely detached from the struggles Jake faced every day. The realization twisted in his heart, igniting insecurities he thought he had put behind him after years of serving his country. Was he enough for her? What if her dad found out she was babysitting for a single dad scraping by? His mind spiraled into dark corners filled with doubt. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as things settled into an uneasy rhythm, calamity struck. The local factory shut down, leaving Jake's neighbors and himself facing a financial nightmare. Families cried, and the community felt the weight of despair. But amidst the chaos, he found himself standing beside Emma, working together to rally a grassroots effort. Every meal they delivered was a step toward healing, every smile they shared a reminder that they were all in this together. Watching Emma dive headfirst into the chaos ignited something inside Jake. She was no longer just the CEO's daughter, she was a young woman determined to forge her own path, to make a real difference. Their friendship blossomed in the midst of adversity, and Jake felt his heart swell with admiration. But temptation danced in the wings of his heart. Could he let love blossom when every part of him screamed he might not be enough? As the community event approached, anxiety gripped Jake like a vice. Would he take that leap of faith? Would he allow himself to feel more for Emma, even when the weight of the world pressed down on him? With hope flickering and uncertainty looming, Jake found himself at a crossroads, a moment that could either bind them together or tear them apart forever. The day of the community event dawned with a muted glow, the air thick with anticipation. Jake stood in front of the mirror, running a hand through his slightly tousled hair, heart racing. The event wasn't just a booth distributing food and supplies, it was a chance for him to see Emma's spirit shine in a way that gripped him with both worry and hope. When he arrived at the park, a rush of familiar faces met him. Neighbors who once greeted him with nods of recognition now called his name, their eyes filled with gratitude. He could feel the weight of their struggles, but also a budding connection, a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in a long time. And in the center of it all was Emma, her presence like a lighthouse drawing him in. She was busy arranging tables, her laughter mingling with the chatter of children chasing squirrels and families setting up picnic blankets. Jake felt that familiar flutter in his chest watching her. There was something almost magnetic about the way she moved, effortless and full of life. When she spotted him, her smile seemed to brighten the gray day, transforming the ordinary into something extraordinary. "Jake! You made it!" she called out, waving a hand. He returned the gesture, his own smile shaky yet genuine. Wouldn't he miss it? As they organized the supplies, Emma leaned in closer, her voice low. I'm so excited about this, but more so to see how everyone is coming together. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Jake felt the remnants of his doubts beginning to crack. They chatted about logistics, but the conversation flowed easily, dipping into the lighter notes of their lives. Mia and Lily, oblivious to the underlying tension their father was experiencing, scampered around Emma, chattering away, declaring her their best babysitter ever. Do you always babysit for kids this cool? Emma teased, a playful glint in her eye. Jake chuckled softly, his belly warming at her ease with the twins. Only the best. Just then, a hush descended as the mayor approached, the weight of his speech palpable. He spoke of unity, the strength of community, how together, they could conquer any storm. As the crowd cheered, Jake felt a bittersweet knot forming in his throat. This was what he had fought for, to be part of something greater, for Mia and Lily to grow up in a world where togetherness overshadowed hardship. Halfway through the festivities, Emma turned to Jake, her brow furrowed slightly. Can we step away for a moment? I'd like to talk. Jake's heart thudded. Was this it? Was she about to pull back, realizing the gulf of their lives was too wide? As they walked to a quieter area, the cacophony of laughter and music faded into the background. She hesitated, searching for the right words. I love what we're doing here. Helping, it just feels right. I want to understand you more, your life, your dreams. We can help each other. His breath caught. Could they really bridge the divide that haunted him? The question hung heavy between them, charged with potential and vulnerability. But just as Jake was about to respond, a commotion erupted at the entrance of the park. A group of protesters, holding signs against the factory closure, barged in, their voices intermingling with the laughter a heartbeat before. Jake's pulse quickened, his instincts kicking in. Emma, stay here, he urged, stepping away to assess the situation. As chaos erupted, Jake looked back at Emma. Her eyes, wide with concern, seemed to whisper fears he tried to ignore. In that moment, he realized the weight of his decision was even greater than he thought. Would he step back into comforting shadows, or could they face this together? With heart pounding and adrenaline surging, Jake made his choice. What happened next would change everything. Jake stepped away from Emma, the noise of the protesters growing louder. The air shifted. It felt charged, as if a storm was brewing just outside the park. He wasn't sure what was about to happen, but he knew he needed to protect Emma and the children. The sheer chaos cast a dark shadow over the vibrantly cheerful event that he edged closer to the entrance, trying to make sense of the jumble of voices shouting against the backdrop of music. An elderly woman was waving a sign that read, "Save our jobs," while young people yelled in protest about corporate greed. Instinctively, he gritted his teeth. For so long, he had been on the receiving end of such decisions, and the anguish of those words echoed in his bones. Jake! Emma's voice sliced through the crowd, pulling him back from the brink of his thoughts. He turned, and there she was, moving toward him with a determined look painted across her face. We can't let this escalate. He met her gaze, and for a moment, the chaos faded into a blur. There was resolve in her eyes, a shared mission pulsing between them. Emma, it's not safe. You should find Mia and Lily, he urged, the words tumbling out, edged with urgency. No. I won't leave you. This isn't just about us. It's about our community. She insisted, standing firm, her presence grounding him. The crowd seemed to swell. Jake glanced around. Families were starting to disperse, some pulling children away from the protests. Panic set in for a moment, but then he remembered the spirit of what they had been building: a community, unity. He turned to face Emma again, her expression a mixture of bravery and fear. What's happening here represents so much more than I thought, Jake said, sensing the weight of her words. The noise intensified, and someone shouted, we won't let them destroy our town. The passion in the air tugged at Jake's heart. Could they really stand together, fight for what they believed in. So let us find a way to turn this around, Emma shouted over the din, her voice steady and confident. We can speak to them. We can remind them what we're doing here. Jake's stomach churned with apprehension but also something else, hope. He could see the desperation on the protesters' faces, the raw emotion spilling over. Perhaps this was their opportunity. A chance to bridge the gulf that had seemed so vast between them all, the chance he so desperately wanted for himself and his girls. Together? He asked, looking deep into her eyes, searching for confirmation. Together, she affirmed, her smile breaking through the tension. Empowered by their bond, they moved toward the crowd, hand in hand, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Jake's heart raced not just from fear, but from the realization of their shared purpose, but before they could reach the protesters, a loud crash erupted, sending shockwaves through the crowd. A group of men had pushed in from the side, their intentions unclear. Gasps filled the air, and the scene teetered on the brink of chaos. For a fleeting second, Jake locked eyes with Emma, and the unspoken worry mirrored in her gaze solidified their resolve. Danger lurked, yet the fire of connection between them sparked a fierce determination. Stay close. He called out, gripping her hand tighter as they moved into the fray. The shouts grew louder, and the world around them began to blur. Would they stand strong in unity, or would the chaos break the fragile thread that now bound them? Just as everything seemed to escalate beyond control, a familiar face emerged from the mass. The mayor had stepped forward, intent on defusing the situation. Jake's breath caught. Would this be the moment of resolution they desperately needed, or simply another layer added to the unfolding storm? Jake felt a rush of relief as the mayor approached, his authoritative presence cutting through the chaos like a beacon. The crowd began to quiet, the protesters' chants fading into murmurs, curiosity intertwining with their anger. Emma squeezed Jake's hand tighter, her eyes fixed on the mayor, searching for a glimmer of hope amid the uncertainty. Thank you for your patience, the mayor called out, raising both hands in a gesture of calm. I know tensions are high, but we need to discuss this peacefully. Our community is stronger together, not divided. Jake could feel the collective breath of the crowd hitch, a moment of tension punctuated by the mayor's words. Hope flickered in his chest. Could this truly be a turning point? He scanned the faces around him. Some were weary, others hopeful, but all seemed to hang on the mayor's next words. The mayor continued speaking about unity and resilience, but Jake found his focus shifting to Emma. She was radiant in her determination. With each word he heard, he could see her spirit lifting the crowd, igniting a shared desire for constructive dialogue. But just as Jake was about to turn his attention back to the mayor, two men in dark jackets stepped forward, challenging the mayor's authority. You can't talk your way out of this, one of them shouted, his voice thick with anger. We need real change, not just empty promises. The crowd erupted again, and Jake's heart raced. The tension in the air thickened, and he could see the fear on some faces returning. Emma's grip on his hand tightened even more, her knuckles turning white. Stay calm. The mayor pleaded, moving closer to the men. His voice was steady, but Jake could see the strain in his jaw. I'm here to listen to your concerns. Let us address the issues together. Yet, the men weren't interested in listening. Their discomfort morphed into rage, inciting the crowd once more. Jake felt a wave of panic wash over him as he registered the anger pouring from the onlookers. This isn't right, Emma. We have to get them to see reason, he managed to say, the fear creeping in. Emma turned to him, her eyes fierce. This is the moment, Jake. They're scared, just like us. She took a deep breath, the determination resurfacing. We can offer them a solution. We can show them that unity doesn't mean surrender. Taking a moment to breathe deeply, Jake felt the warmth of her spirit wash over him. Could they really make a difference here? Could they turn this storm into a chance for change? Before he could answer, the crowd surged closer, driven by the heated protests. In the turmoil, a child cried out, startling the crowd even more. Jake's heart dropped. They were risking everything not just for themselves but for the little ones who looked to them for safety and strength. With a surge of resolve, he turned to Emma again. What if we step forward together? We can pull focus away from anger and toward hope. We owe it to our kids. Let us do it, Emma replied, a blaze igniting in her eyes. Hand in hand, they stepped forward, cutting through the crowd. With each step, the noise felt less threatening, more like an opportunity. But just as they were about to reach the center of the crowd, the two men lurched toward them, eyes filled with desperation. Are you seriously choosing the corporate line over your community? One roared. Jake's pulse quickened. Were they really prepared to confront this head-on? Was this the moment that would change everything? As the tension coiled tighter around them, every heartbeat felt heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. Would they stand united, or would anger overshadow the hope they yearned for? Jake's heart raced as he and Emma stood firm, their determination set against the tide of anger before them. He could practically feel the weight of many pairs of eyes on them, assessing. Every heartbeat thumped louder in his chest. What had they just committed to? Listen, he began, trying to project his voice above the growing uproar. We all want change. We're scared, we're frustrated, but anger alone won't get us where we need to be. He upturned his palms, inviting the crowd to consider his words. Emma stepped beside him, her voice steadier than Jake felt. We're not here to ignore your pain. We want to find solutions. Her breath hitched slightly, but she pressed on. Our community has strength in unity. We can be the change we want to see. But we have to work together. The two men exchanged glances, their expressions hard. Jake couldn't tell if they were starting to hear what they were saying, or if their fury was growing. One of them clenched his fists, ready for a fight. Solutions? He spat, taking a step forward. What can you offer that hasn't already failed us? Jake swallowed hard. Was he really going to step into this confrontation? But he felt the resolve of Emma beside him, her unwavering presence nudging him. This wasn't just about what they could say, this was about showing the crowd that there was still a path forward. We can set up a community forum. Jake proposed, suddenly filled with ideas. A real space where everyone's voice matters, where we can work with the mayor for tangible change. He felt his pulse quicken. No more empty promises, just steps we can take together. He saw Emma nod alongside him, her eyes jumping between the angry men and the crowd. Think of your kids. She added, her voice rising. What do we want to pass on to them? The ability to fight and scream, or the ability to listen and resolve? We owe it to them to give them better options. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some began murmuring, while others exchanged uncertain looks. Jake's heart swelled with hope, but he knew it was early. The men stayed tense, but they paused, reconsidering. You think a forum will actually change anything? The second man questioned, skepticism lacing his tone. What if it does? Emma retorted, her passion shining through. What if this is the first step toward real accountability, real change? It's time we come together, not just to vent, but to create. The crowd began to shift again. People saw potential in her words, some nodding in agreement. Jake felt the air shift with each passing moment, hearts beginning to warm toward the idea of standing together. But then, a loud crash broke through the gathering, a stray bottle hitting the ground. Tension surged once again as heads whipped toward the source of the noise. It was a sudden reminder of how fragile this flicker of hope was, how quickly everything could unravel. Stay strong. Jake called out, his voice trembling. We can do this. Emma squeezed his hand, her grip as taut as the anticipation around them. They needed each other now more than ever, a united front. The crowd was teetering, uncertain but drawn by a shared dream. And then, unexpectedly, a calm voice from the back shouted, I'll help. It was an older man, someone Jake had seen at community meetings. His words broke through the tense atmosphere, a lifeline in stormy waters. But before they could fully embrace this surge of support, shadows of doubt hovered. What more would it take to quiet the voices of anger? Jake wondered, as the crowd seemed to churn around them, excitement mingling with uncertainty, would they reach a true resolution, or would the clash of emotions pull them apart once again? Just as the murmurs of support began to rise, another figure stepped out of the crowd, a tall woman with a determined look on her face. She brushed back her dark hair, and though her expression reflected the weight of her experiences, there was a brightness in her eyes. "I'm Tasha," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "And I believe in this forum, but I have something to say first." All eyes shifted toward her, curiosity painted on their faces. Jake felt a rush of gratitude wash over him. This was the spark they needed. "Go ahead," Emma encouraged, her grip on Jake's hand tightening, buoyed by Tasha's confidence. "I've lived here my whole life," Tasha began, looking at the crowd with openness. "And I've seen how our voices get drowned out. This town has never listened to us. But what if we use this forum to share our real stories? What if we put names to the issues? If I share my story that could change everything?" The crowd was silent, the gravity of her words sinking in. Jake's chest tightened, he recognized the depth of the pain she carried. This was more than just a political meeting, this was about lives intertwined with the community, struggles that were shared amongst them. In that moment, Jake felt the air shift again. Someone else stepped forward, an older man with graying hair. "I may be a veteran, but I'm unheard here. I have a story worth sharing too." "Me too," called a woman near the front, her voice trembling but resolute. "I lost my job last year, and nobody's asking how that affected my family." One by one, more voices emerged, sharing snippets of their struggles, hopes, and aspirations. As each person spoke, the atmosphere transformed. The tide of anger began to recede, replaced with a sense of solidarity and shared experience. Jake watched as heads nodded. He saw tears glistening in the eyes of people who had once felt alone in their frustrations. Emma beamed at Jake, her face a mixture of relief and joy. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what we needed." But just when a sense of positivity began to envelop them, a voice rose above the gathering again, filled with venom. "And what will all these stories change? Empty words won't feed our kids." The man from before was back, his face reddened with fury. "Every story is a step toward change," Tasha interjected fiercely, her voice unwavering. "You think fighting will solve our problems? Look around. We have to set an example for the next generation." The crowd shifted again, some torn, others emboldened. The anger simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over once more. Jake's heart pounded in his ears. Was it really possible to keep everyone together? Could they channel this energy towards something constructive rather than fall prey to despair and division? As he looked around, people were catching one another's eyes, assessing the mood, a fragile alliance slowly forming. "Let us keep this going," he shouted, feeling an unexpected surge of confidence. "Let us keep telling our stories. We'll make a list of issues we want to address. We can't ignore them any longer." Behind him, the gentle sound of clapping began, first hesitant, but then rising, as others joined in. The clatter grew louder, and for a moment, hope swelled like a wave among the crowd, but then, from the back, a different noise disrupted the moment. A distant siren, growing closer. Anxiety rippled through the gathering. The spark had ignited, but could it withstand the scrutiny about to descend upon them? What looming presence was on its way to challenge them, and would the community hold its ground this time? The sirens grew louder, painting a picture both ominous and inevitable against the hopeful scene unfolding. Jake's heart pounded in his throat. He turned, looking helplessly towards the approaching flashing lights. With every distant wail, the mood shifted back toward uncertainty. Just a few moments ago, people were rising to share their stories, their passion shining through the dark clouds that had loomed over them for far too long. Tasha glanced anxiously at Jake, her earlier confidence faltering. The crowd, once buzzing with energy, now looked like a coiling spring ready to snap. The man from earlier, seething with anger, advanced a few steps. Don't you see? They're coming to shut us down. What do we do now? Just keep talking. Everyone, listen. Emma's voice rang out, trying to anchor the masses. She stepped forward, her voice unwavering despite the chaos. We can't let fear dictate how we respond to this. We've started something beautiful here. Jake took a deep breath, her words resonating in him. What if we tell them we're not afraid? What if we stand together, show them that we have a voice? His voice started low, but he felt it rise as he spoke. If the police are here, let us show them we're united. Let us keep sharing. The crowd murmured, a mix of apprehension and determination buzzing through the air like live wires. The sirens faded for a moment, replaced by the sound of footsteps. The crowd's attention swung towards the entrance of the park where the officers began to appear, their uniforms stark against the glow of the setting sun. Let them hear us. Tasha shouted, her spirit igniting the others. This is our chance. We need them to know that we won back down. If we can stand together, we can face anything. People started to step forward, hesitating only briefly before their resolve took hold again. One by one, they shared their stories, voices rising above the bubbling tension, trembling but passion-filled. Each tale added to a rising tide of support, stitches binding them together as they faced the looming presence of authority. The officers watched, faces inscrutable. Jake couldn't tell if they were there to listen or to silence them. What mattered now was what happened next. With every shared story, he could feel a deep shift happening, a collective heart beating as one. They were more than individuals, they were a community. In a moment of inspired clarity, he turned to Emma. What if we write down our main issues right here? We can show the officers we're serious about making a change. Great idea. Emma replied, her eyes lighting up as she pulled out a notebook. Let us gather everyone's thoughts. Let us give them clear, actionable points. As more voices emerged with stories written into words of struggle, the crowd leaned in. Suddenly, the tension in the air began to lift, crackling with a determination that felt almost palpable. The officers adjusted their positions, eyes shifting as they took in the resilient faces around them. Just then, the main officer stepped forward. What's happening here? He called out, the crowd falling silent. Jake's heart raced. This was it, the questions hung in the air, heavy with expectation. Could they channel all this raw emotion and unity into something powerful? Would the authorities listen? But before they could respond, a woman at the back, a stranger, clutched her chest, eyes wide. I think they're here to listen. As all eyes turned on her, Jake sensed a shift again, an anticipation that raised the hairs on his arms. What would they decide to do next? Would they turn this moment into a force for change against the very backdrop of conflict? Or was this just the beginning of another fight? Jake could hardly breathe as anxiety tangled with hope inside him. Every gaze lingered on that woman who dared to voice what they all desperately wished was true. The tension hung like a thick fog, making the world feel surreal. He could see the officers exchanging glances, something shifting in their postures that felt almost hopeful. Emma took a step back, bringing the notepad closer to her chest, as if warding off any disbelief. The crowd stirred, a ripple of whispers traveling through the gathered faces. It was like a wave swelling before crashing down, anticipation flooded into a shared consciousness. I'm not leaving until they hear us, shouted the man who had been skeptical, his fists tightening. We deserve to be heard. More voices joined in, riding the tide of determination. We've been silent for too long. Another echoed, a fierce glimmer in her eye. Suddenly, the park that had once felt heavy with fear was alive with resilience. The main officer stepped closer, brow furrowed, lips pressed together in a thin line. I need you to lower your voices, he said, trying to cut through the rising clamor. But the crowd wouldn't budge. They had tasted empowerment and craved more. Jake felt a familiar warmth spread through him, a feeling of belonging. They were doing this together. He joined in the chorus, shouting alongside Emma, Tasha, and the others. We want our voices to be heard. We are tired of living in shadows. The officers stood there, revealing patches of hesitance in their stoic facades. It was a sight Jake would remember, those uniforms, once so intimidating, becoming just another part of the landscape as they faced the gathering force of united voices. With every story they shared, he saw eyes flicker with understanding. Backstories unfolded, tales of family struggles, job losses, and dreams dashed. And for each new story, a new thread wove into the fabric of their shared experiences, binding them tighter as a community. Then, something shifted, drawing Jake's attention away from the voices. The main officer clenched his jaw, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I'm not here to shut you down," he eventually said, each word carrying the weight of surprise. "I'm here to listen, but you need to be civil." Jake could hardly believe what he was hearing. Was this the start of something? It felt like a crack in the door, a flickering light where darkness once reigned. A calm buzz swept over the crowd, but beneath that calm lay a veritable storm of emotion. "Then listen!" yelled Tasha, her voice fierce, defiant. "We have demands. We need action. Action." The officer's gaze softened, and for a second, Jake glimpsed a man only seeking to bridge a chasm. "Then we need a plan. You want to be heard, to make change. Let us discuss it here. Together." He motioned for the crowd to gather around. His tone parted the air like a warm breeze, startling in its openness. Jake's heart raced again, this time with excitement. "We need to write everything down, make it clear. Let's get our demands straight." He turned to Emma, determination blossoming between them. The crowd buzzed with newfound fervor. One by one, people began to brainstorm, sharing ideas, hopes, and visions for what they wanted to achieve. Brochures and pamphlets from past events seemed to materialize out of nowhere as spontaneous leadership emerged. As ideas sparked and flowed, Jake felt adrenaline course through him. This was their moment, their chance to pull everyone together, to stand up and say they mattered. But just as the group began to harness this energy, a sharp voice cut through, "And what if they don't listen?" Silence fell again, the question floating heavy over them. What if? The officer watched, the flicker in his eyes suggesting he too was anticipating this next step. Would they dissolve into uncertainty, or would they take what was turning into a transformative moment and chart a path forward? Together, Jake felt sweat bead on his brow, his eyes darting between the officer and the crowd. Everything was shifting, and he was caught right in the middle. Would they break through the barrier of authority, or was this moment just an echo of the past? He swallowed hard, realizing he needed to answer that lingering question. What would it take for them to feel truly heard? What would be the price of their courage? Jake stood at the heart of a moment that felt electric. The doubts loomed, but so did the resolve that flowed through the crowd. What would it take? He could hear the whispers of uncertainty mixed with the strong voices of determination around him. They needed to find their center, to communicate their dreams clearly to the officers who stood before them, a bridge between their struggles and the action they craved. With a look of fierce determination, Jake raised his voice. "Let us form a list. Every idea counts. We should each say one thing we want to change." The crowd's murmurs shifted, igniting a renewed sense of purpose. Each face became illuminated with possibility, hopeful light breaking through the shadows of fear. Emma bit her lip, her eyes sparkling with conviction. "I want affordable housing. It's a basic need. More job opportunities," shouted a burly man from the back, raising a fist. The crowd echoed the response, a wave of voices rising high. "Access to healthcare." The woman who had first shouted stepped forward again, and her voice was firm. The energy infused the park, sparking ideas like fireworks in the air. Each demand felt significant, like small stones making waves in a lake. Jake scribbled down the thoughts as fast as he could, feeling the weight of each one. This was their chance to show they were not just a collection of stories but a unified voice demanding change, yet every shouting voice held the same underlying fear. What if they were met with resistance? What if their dreams fell on deaf ears yet again? As Jake looked to the officer, he saw the man feverishly note down each demand too, perhaps influenced by the very passion that fueled the crowd around him. But could he be trusted? Tasha, sensing the uncertainty swirling through the group, stood tall. We can't back down now, we need to press on. Her voice stirred the crowd, becoming a rallying call, igniting a connection that was palpable. If we want change, we have to keep pushing. They LLC us, hear us. Jake gathered courage as he stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. And if they don't respond? What do we do then? We can't just fade back into silence, we have to make them listen. A new question hung in the air: how far were they willing to go? His thoughts raced, filled with unwavering determination but also apprehension. The dreams of affordable housing, job opportunities, and healthcare hung delicately from all their hopes. It was a collective lifeline. The officer, suddenly looking pale for a moment, engaged the crowd. If you really believe in this, he began hesitantly, then let us set up a meeting with the department heads. We'll talk about how we can get this process started, but you need to promise to bring more people. The more voices, the harder it will be to ignore. A rush of enthusiasm pervaded the crowd, and a chorus of agreement surged forth. Then it's settled, shouted Emma. We meet to organize. Cheers erupted, but beneath the excitement, Jake sensed an undercurrent of anxiety. They were on the edge of something monumental, but what might they sacrifice for this victory? Would it be enough? Just then, a sudden commotion broke out at the far side of the park. Jake turned to see a group of people rushing toward them with expressions of disbelief. What is happening? He wondered, heart thudding, sensing that something else was unfolding, something that could change everything for them yet again. As the new folks neared, Jake felt a pull of curiosity and worry. He had to know what they wanted, but would it be good or bad news? His gut churned with anxiety, unsure of the new twist ahead. The crowd parted as the newcomers approached, faces a mix of exhaustion and hope. Jake squinted against the sun, trying to read their expressions. One woman, hands trembling, jumped forward, clutching a folder tightly against her chest. We have news from the factory. She shouted, breathless. The crowd fell into a hush, curiosity buzzing like electricity. Jake exchanged glances with Emma, who stepped up beside him, her eyes wide and shimmering with anticipation. What happened? Jake urged, his pulse quickening. The woman took a deep breath, gathering herself. The factory's corporate office decided to reverse the layoffs. They're looking to reopen soon. They want to meet with the workers this Friday to discuss plans. A wave of relief washed over the crowd, as hands flew to mouths gasping in disbelief. Cheers erupted, and people embraced, tears streaming down faces of both joy and renewed hope. Jake felt a swell of emotion reach deep into his heart, flooding him with warmth. Emma looked up at him, her eyes shining. This is incredible. As the cheers roared, the officer stepped back, momentarily forgotten in the jubilation. He looked around at the crowd, now bursting with a collective spirit that felt like a potent force. Everyone. We need to remember what this victory means, he called out, raising his hands in a bid for calm. This doesn't erase everything we've talked about. This is just the beginning. The crowd quieted, giving him attention. Jake sensed a shift, a newfound solidarity emerging from the chaos. They had fought for their voices, and now they were being heard. More than just the news about the factory, this meeting had fostered community, a deep recognition that they needed to lift one another, to stand in unison. Emma reached for Jake's hand, squeezing it tightly, their bond forged in the flames of adversity. Jake, she said, excitement bubbling in her tone. We can help organize that meeting. Let us make sure all voices are heard. Jake nodded, feeling the thrill of purpose. Yes. We'll make it happen. This initiative can serve as a stepping stone, not just for the factory, but for everything we've talked about. Let us collect stories, demands, and prioritize them for that meeting. People around them began to murmur in agreement, already buzzing with new ideas. One person shouted, "Let us create a community action group." Others echoed support, excitement fueling their momentum. Jake could hardly believe it. Not only had they rallied to support one another, but they were now instruments of change. Real change. As Jake and Emma began brainstorming ways to engage more of the community in the upcoming rural forum, the sun began to dip low, casting a warm gold hue over the park. Jake glanced at his daughters, watching them play with a group of children nearby. Their laughter sounded like music to his ears, igniting a vibrant sense of hope within him. This was for them, for Mia and Lily, a chance for them to grow up in a thriving community, one where their voices mattered. "Hey," Emma said, nudging his shoulder. "Look at them. They're our future. Let us give them a world to dream in." Jake smiled, warmth flooding through him. He hadn't just found a sense of belonging in this community, he had found love. What had once felt like a gaping divide between his life and Emma's now seemed like an opportunity to forge something new, not just romantic but transformative for all involved. The future sat before them, chill in the dusk, yet illuminated by a flickering feeling of unity. As the voices of the past echoed behind them, fresh words sprang forth, merging with laughter and dreams. They were no longer alone in their struggles. Together, Jake declared, rising above the whispers and shouts, finding the power in collective resolve. Together. Emma echoed, igniting the crowd to respond. A chorus of voices rose once more, infused with renewed purpose. "Let us take this momentum into our meeting on Friday," Jake said, excitement igniting the air around them. "Let us make sure it's the beginning of something great." As the sun dipped behind the horizon, the park vibrated with laughter, conversation, and the promise of newfound determination. Hand in hand, Jake and Emma stepped towards the stillness of the evening, ready for whatever lay ahead. They could face it, all of it together. This was the moment where love met purpose, creating something undeniably beautiful. And as they stood side by side, hearts full, anticipation fluttered in the cool night air. Don't let another transformative story pass you by. You need to subscribe now to catch exclusive stories in the future. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Leave a comment below with your reactions and feelings about the ending. Your thoughts matter, and for those who need to see this transformation too, share this video with at least 5 friends today. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting this channel through these actions.